just the mood music around Anthropic, the power that it has, the use of Claude, the enterprise adoption. It all seems to be very strong right now, Peter. Are there any concerns that you have?
I think when you own a business and when you're an investor in any company, you always have concerns around companies. It's our job to worry about the holdings that we have. But I think that what we're seeing at Anthropic at the moment is unprecedented. In 15 years of investing, I've never seen a company of this scale grow this quickly. And I think what we're seeing is a company that is really pushing the edges of or the boundaries of where AI can be brought to bear in real-world applications, initially in coding, which really broke out last year, and with the Mythos models, we're starting to see how it can really impact cybersecurity as well.
What has been notable, apart from Mythos, has been the adoption, the ARR, that they're managing to post $30 billion, and the amount of enterprises that are now using it, even in the face of concern that they are suing the government because of the current sort of blacklisting singled out by the Pentagon. How is that narrative driving what you think about Anthropic at the moment?
Well, when we invested in Anthropic, one of the reasons we liked the business was the principled approach they took to safety. Now, that, I think, has informed how they're approaching the Mythos models, and it's informed the approach that they've had with the Department of War. So whilst we would, of course, rather not see them in this disagreement with the Department of War, I think, and the company have said this, that there's more that unites them than divides them with the Department of War, and I think it's important to us to see a company standing by the underlying principles which enables them to flourish and enables them to attract and retain key talent.
What has been so interesting about the headline generation from Mythos is that people are looking at the model itself. You know, Caroline's absolutely right, the revenue run rate, all those kind of classic measures for late-stage startups. But just your sort of response to the model's capability, Anthropic's place in a group of 5 or 6 frontier labs that are trying to do exactly that, very big models with great capability.
Yeah, I mean, what we've seen with these LLMs is that the capabilities of the leading edge models will quickly become available to the trailing edge models, and then what separates the likes of Anthropic or OpenAI is their ability to continuously stay at the leading edge. And so, as a citizen, it does concern me that there will be these capabilities which today are in the hands of Anthropic, who we trust. But I think it is inevitable that these tools, whether in the Mythos model or developed by other foundational models, will become more widely available. And I think that leaves a lot of enterprises, a lot of governments, a lot of economic systems vulnerable to attacks.
A lot of focus in the United States on Anthropic. There was a headline this morning that OpenAI, which you are not an investor in, is opening a permanent London office, having wound down the Stargate project in the UK. I ask you all that basically to push you on whether people outside of the United States see that same level of battle that's going on between the frontier labs, and whether the release of a model like Mythos impacts everyday people in the United Kingdom or in Europe.
I think in the very short term, the everyday person on the street is not impacted, this week or next week. But are these models going to impact all of our lives in the months and years to come? Like, yes, absolutely. I think that here in the UK, those that are in the industry, those that follow this, are just as aware and on top of what's going on as peers in the US. But I think that within the UK, there isn't such a sort of kind of cultural resonance of developments in technology as perhaps there is in the US, by virtue of the fact that it's such a large and important part of the US economy, and in the UK, sadly, it is not such a dominant part of our economy.
I mean, Peter, what hasn't been notable is, while we're all spellbound by AI, the whole world has been spellbound by space over the course of the weekend. And I'm interested, therefore, in your exposure to SpaceX and exposure to XAI in many ways. How are you thinking about this moment that everyone's world changes if they get access to some of these big companies, not just being private, but potential to be public as well?
I think it's important that everyday investors are able to access these kinds of companies. And so I think these companies coming to the public markets is overall a good thing. I think what is in many ways a shame for the everyday investor is that there is so much growth that has already happened before these companies come to the public markets. And it's not just Anthropic, it's not just SpaceX. You could look at ByteDance, for instance, in China, the owner of TikTok. ByteDance today is 40 to 50 times larger in revenue and profit than Facebook was when it listed. That's a leg of growth, an enormous amount of growth, which is accrued to private market investors, which is foregone by public market investors. And so this is why we invest in these companies, is to be able to give our clients access to this growth that's happening privately. Historically, that happened in the public markets, but where you can only really do growth investing properly today if you're doing it in both the private and the public markets.
Peter, I know we've had the opportunity to speak to you a lot recently. Just very quickly, at this point, does the market understand the economics of orbital data center ahead of this SpaceX IPO?
No, I don't think the market does understand the economics of orbital data centers. I think that this is a very nascent idea, a nascent technology, and where that value can potentially accrue, I think, is through the vertical integration with the models. If we get to this place where power for compute in AI models is existential pinch point for these businesses. So in short, no, I think it's not yet well understood. It doesn't, in a sense, exist yet. But I think what is well understood at SpaceX is the incredible launch business they have and the incredible economics of Starlink.